Good evening, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope blog and podcast. I'm talking today with Samantha Geimer. Um, to be honest, a majority of you are a younger audience, so I'm not quite sure how familiar you are with Sam's story, but many of you may have heard of Roman Polanski, who is still a pretty acclaimed director. And Sam was actually involved in a sexual assault rape case that came about due to Roman Polanski. Um, if you Google it, it was, all over the press, and it's still interviews that she gives now talking about that. Um, and, Sam, I kind of want to dive a little deeper. I want to ask you kind of, before what happened with Roman Polanski, because I believe that was in your early teen years. Um, how would you describe your childhood if you could pick one word to kind of describe what it was like before that?
I think I had a happy childhood. I was doted on and spoiled and pretty much wanted for nothing. So, I I enjoyed my childhood. It was not difficult.
What was it? What were some hobbies or things you enjoyed doing as a kid?
I mean, when I was a kid, I was just a kid. I was a tomboy, and my friend was a tomboy, so we did tree climbing and roof hopping and playing out in the alley and things like that. And when I got a little older, I was into gymnastics and dance and wanted to be an actress and a model and got more hobbies that would lend to being in the entertainment industry because that's what I was interested in. And we did move to Los Angeles when I was 12, so my interest and kind of shifted uh, at that time because it was a long move from Pennsylvania to California. So that was some pretty big changes for me.
What did you think was, I mean, because you're right, that's across the country and also really different culture-wise. What was the big thing that stood out to you moving to Los Angeles?
It was very different. It's hard to even pinpoint one thing that was different because I went from a factory town to a Santa Monica type beach town. So everything was different. The people were different. The kids in school were different. The school was different itself. It was like bungalows, not a big brick building. And um, the just kind of the environment of that beach living. So it seemed like nothing was the same, more than like what's different. Nothing was the same. So completely new experience. And I'm going to say, excuse me now, because I've been fighting a cold. So you might have to edit out some coughs. I'm having a little trouble getting rid of it.
No, you're okay. Did you move to Los Angeles because of your mom? Because your mom was in the acting career, wasn't she, or in
Right.
fashion?
Correct. My mom and my dad had separated and divorced as she had first moved to New York, but then she moved to California, and then I went to live there with her, and that's because she was a working actress. That was all she did. So obviously, if you want to have a career and you want to be an actress or a movie star, New York or Los Angeles is the place to go. So
Hmm.
she was there pursuing her own career, and then I was sent when I was 12, 13
Now,
off to live in California.
did you want to be an actress because of your mom, or is that something that
Probably, I can't. I mean, yeah, if my mom wasn't an actress and I hadn't grown up watching her do community theater and modeling and things like that, I'm not sure, if I would have had any interest in it. But that was kind of my example. Even my father acted in community theater. So
okay.
that was just something that seemed normal to me. But I'm sure it was inspired by the fact that my mother was doing it. But I was also, I was kind of fascinated with movies and Marilyn Monroe and fame. I guess to the extent any of us might be.
Did you have a favorite actress when you were younger?
Oh well, my favorite actor would have been Marilyn Monroe when I was younger. And then when I got a little older, like younger teen, uh, it would have been more my peer group, like Jodie Foster and Brooke Shields, and uh, you know people who I could relate to, like I could do those parts type of thing.
Yeah. What did you have like a as a kid, if you're, thinking about this and wanting to get into this industry, did you have like a dream or a goal that you kind of,
I
this is what I want to
I
be able to do?
I think I mean, so we're talking when I was 13 and younger. And I think I just wanted to be famous. I just wanted to be a movie star. I just enjoyed that idea of fame. I don't think I really understood what that entailed or the work it took or had like a goal of like, you know, if I could become a really good actress, or it was like I could be a model or a rock star or an actress. It was more of a little bit of a fantasy, knowing now as an adult what I know. I wasn't quite familiar with the kind of work that actually takes.
Well, I was gonna ask because when you moved in with your mom, did you kind of get a taste of that, seeing, the long working hours and the fact that it all wasn't super glorious all the time?
You know, it's funny because my mom did a lot of dinner theater when I was younger. So she would work nights and I would go see her plays. Um, and then when I did move to California, I, could see the auditioning process, but I didn't, um, I never saw her work because that all would have been while I was at school. I just
Okay.
knew she was doing things. She's getting commercials, she's getting parts, everyone's getting headshots, um, and where I lived in the San Fernando Valley, a lot of my peers were also auditioning. I was in
Okay.
drama, so the other kids, they were auditioning, quite a few of them. So it was kind of the right place to be if you wanted to pursue that, because it was not abnormal like as it would have been back in York, Pennsylvania. That's crazy. But where I was living in Woodland Hills, California, that was like, well, a lot of, like a lot of us are doing that. So it seemed like a more reasonable and normal path to choose.
Were a lot of your peers getting parts? Because I know, like, auditioning, there's a lot of that, but actually getting a role is harder.
I remember that one of my girlfriends who I still know, we both auditioned for the same part, and she got that part. So
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
know anybody who had like it was a sitcom. So I didn't know anyone who was really working, but I knew people that were doing commercials and going on auditions.
Was it hard for you that your friend got the part and you didn't?
Not really, because it was a little scary to get it too. Like then all of a sudden I realized like, oh, she put herself out there. Everyone's gonna see that. And then it was like, wow, that's like kind of scary. So yeah, I think I was just happy that she got it. And at that audition, I met Carol O'Connor in the hallway, uh, Archie Bunker, and so it was worth it because that was a highlight.
I love All in the Family.
Yeah, yeah. So that was a highlight. So I didn't get the part, and she got it, but then I had no risk and got to
What
meet
was he
somebody
like
famous.
in person when you met
He
him?
was
What was he like?
very nice. He like pinched my belly button and called me cute because I like a little short top on. So it was nice, and it was it didn't seem unusual. It just seemed like a a not so uncommon thing to be doing in the group of people I knew.
Yeah, because how old were you then?
Just 13.
Yeah, see,
But
it's such a
they put
different.
kids in commercials, right? So you gotta have kids.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a different mentality that, he could pinch your belly button and that was fine.
Oh yeah, this was 76, 77, a completely different world than we're living in now. So 60, I mean that's 50, 45 years ago. Yes, that was it was no, I mean, I say that like I experienced it like that was nothing. That was like he was just some nice guy being nice to me. My mom was standing right there, it wasn't like weird.
Is there, as you've seen kind of,
Oh, I think you
um,
might. Oh, there you are. You froze up for a second. Now I can hear you. Go ahead.
no, you're good. I was gonna say with like the, you know, just the difference in culture, because now, we've had the Me Too movement.
Mhm.
Um, there's such a different perspective on the whole um female, male, sexual, the whole sexual connotation. For you, like, do you ever miss, back in the 70s, or for you, do you see the growth and what's
Well,
going on as like good change, or do you miss the past?
I feel both ways about it. I feel like I miss, I mean, so when you grow up, things are the way they are. You don't question them. This is
Right.
just the way society is. You don't think, should it be different? So I miss all that freedom and wildness and fun. But on the other hand, I'm like happy that things are changing, and for like my daughter-in-laws or my granddaughter, that there's a lot of improvement in some of the bad side of that. Like, uh, I guess it's mostly, uh, you know, just kind of some sexism and the way women were treated more, worst. um,
Yeah.
I don't, it's like I'm glad that things are getting better and that they have more uh, power, and that men are expected to treat them differently than the things, like certainly my mom, and that I experienced, as a younger person. So I miss the fun. I'm glad that the negative part of that has improved. So I would, I guess you can't have it both ways.
The fun being, what do you mean exactly by fun?
Well, I mean, there was I mean, it kind of depends when we're talking about, because there's a lot more freedom, there was a lot less rules. Like, as even as a young teenager, you had more freedom. Like I had a boyfriend, he was 17, I was 13, that was fine. Like that,
Yeah.
so there was a certain amount of freedom that was like fun. And then as you get older, there's a lot more of like the kind of sex, drugs, rock and roll kind of freedom, and that was also fun, although dangerous. So I, things like the way we got to run around, and just be free and have our youth and
Yeah.
experiment in growing up, uh, without what seems to be a lot more pressure today. Like I appreciated that. I mean, when I was 13, you could go to an R-rated movie, nobody cared, they just let you in. So it was, I mean, it's what talking about it sounds bad, but the way I remember it, it was great. So
So it is, if I'm understanding you, it's more of like children back in the 70s had more time to just experiment, try things out. Not even more time, but just less restrictions than they do now.
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if less restrictions. I guess, because it's such a different time from now to then. I mean, we didn't have social media, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't,
Yeah.
we were like the go out till the street lights come on and then come home.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like we had a lot of freedom, and everything was more permissive. You know,
Right.
the Me Too era has really uh, kind of put a microscope on how people behave towards each other. So all that like running around and going to concerts, and you know, there's not a lot of judgment. People are,
Right.
getting high and running around and having sex and doing all the stuff you do when you're a teenager. And it was like more normal, where I feel like now people are a lot more cautious, a lot more careful, which is all good, except I'm still glad that we had that like wild youth. So
Yeah.
I clearly have uh, mixed feelings about it, you know.
Yeah. Well, you did, because you met Roman Polanski for the first time when you were, was it like 13,
Yeah, I
15?
was 13.
Okay.
So I was almost 14. All these events happened just in the month before my 14th birthday. So for most of my memory of everything, all this fallout and legal stuff and publicity, for me, I was 14 when all that happened. But yeah, I was 13 when I met him and we did the photo shoot, stuff like that.
So for especially for the audience, because I do have a younger audience, who may not even know your story, can you explain like how you met him and how that kind of unfolded that it came to the point where there's actually a legal case against him?
Well, that is a very long story, but I can probably summarize it pretty briefly. Um, he was a very famous director who had just done Chinatown, uh, as
Okay.
did many people in Hollywood. He also did other things. So he also did photography and, you know, just I mean, I feel like he's acted in some of his own movies. So he
Yeah.
was in the business, very famous, was a friend of a friend, was looking for younger girls, you know, like young teenage girls to photograph. An
For
example,
any for
Natasha
anything.
Kinsky. Oh, it was for a
Yeah.
magazine. But
Okay.
we all, well, your audience may not know who Natasha Kinsky is, but he had already done photographs of her. So that was something that we even could see before the modeling shoot. So it was like, you know, you want to get your pictures taken by the most famous director in the world for a magazine in France. And the answer was like, yes, I'm going to be famous now. This is my ticket. You know, it was like it seemed to be an incredible opportunity and like stroke of luck. Um, so you know, he met my mom, he came over, we did a test shoot, and then we went on a like more professional shoot, where I went with him and we took pictures other places. But that was the way the story unfolded. And then of course there was the sex, and then of course then that my mom found out, and then there's police, and there's huge media. Just it was like the most, it was before OJ Simpson, it was like the
Yeah.
most crazy thing that ever happened, and there we were just shocked to be in the middle of it, and also on the wrong end of it, because this was before Me Too. This was
Yeah.
not like, oh, you poor young girl. This was like, you gold digger, you're a liar. And so, you know, so
Hmm.
that's where we ended up, uh, once my mom called the police.
So
So
how
that's kind
when
of a short story of it.
well when you first met him, did you guys have really good rapport and did you enjoy the photo shoots with him?
No, you know, I didn't really think I did a good job. And I was really surprised when he called back for another photo shoot. And I kind of didn't want to go because I was uncomfortable. And the reason I was uncomfortable is because I had taken topless pictures, like assuming they would be
Yeah.
cropped, or right. Like this is an adult. He's famous. He's not going to do anything like inappropriate. And this is the days of Taxi Driver and Pretty Baby. So
Yeah.
my example is, you know, naked teenagers in the movies. So you know, but I knew, I felt weird about that, and I didn't tell my mom about it. And then when it was
Okay,
time to
so
go
she
back, I
didn't
kind of,
know. Okay.
no, oh no. So then it was awkward, and I kind of didn't want to go because I kind of, in my mind, I felt like that it's just that there, not that there was something wrong with it. I just felt uncomfortable. And like I said, I didn't feel like I did a good job. So he wasn't making me feel like super great.
Hmm.
But I was just couldn't, I felt like, oh gosh, I can't just now say, no, I don't want to do this. Like, this is my shot. And like, I could now be Brooke Shields. That's what I wanted. I felt like I should do it. So
Yeah.
off I went.
Well, when you're saying that you didn't feel like you did a good job, in what way? Do you think because you were uncomfortable, you thought you weren't doing a good job? Or,
I don't think it was that. He just wasn't, you know, he wasn't telling me, oh, that looks great, you're doing great,
okay.
you're doing a great job. He was telling me, how about this, how about that, try that. And it's more of his personality, I think. But I guess when you pay somebody to take your pictures, like your headshots,
Yeah.
there's a lot more positive affirmation. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like that. It wasn't like, oh, you're perfect. It was more like, could you do this a little bit that way? And I wasn't really a model. So I wasn't, it wasn't my skill set wasn't posing. Um, but so yeah, so I just didn't feel like I did that great, and I guess I felt like not so much that the topless pictures were something that was like wrong, because I'm like, he's not going to put these in a magazine. They'll like crop them or change them or whatever. But maybe because I didn't tell my mom, and now here I am in this like kind of uncomfortable position. So
Right.
I just felt like funny about it. Um, but yet against my better intuition, off I went, because I was, 13 and I was ambitious, and it was just poor judgment.
Yeah. Well, what was that first sexual encounter like for you? If I'm
It
kind
was
of looking through the eyes of a 13-year-old,
yeah, I
how did that
mean,
feel?
it was I mean, I had, like I said, I had a boyfriend who was 17. I had this 17-year-old boyfriend for quite some time. We had had sex, so I wasn't a virgin. So I understood what was happening. But I guess the best way to describe it is, we're doing these photos, and the day goes on, and everything's just fine. And um, but I started drinking champagne, and that's probably not the smartest idea for my judgment, but I was having fun. And then when it came to, I realized he had these intentions of like sexual interest in me. It just all happened so fast. There was no time to be afraid. There was no time to like figure something out. It was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize. And
Hmm.
then I thought, oh, well, here I am drinking champagne, posing topless. Like, what did I think was going to happen? I'm so stupid. But it was all so quick. I mean, this is like a whole day with, or hours with somebody, and then this short half-hour period at the end of the day that unfolded so quickly. I was just shocked, really. And I
Yeah.
wasn't, it was frightening, but I wasn't like afraid, because I understood. I wasn't afraid he was going to harm me. He wasn't being mean to me. I just got like in over my head, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to say no. And it all happened so quick. And then it was over, and it was like, oh my God, wow, that just happened. And then it was just, like, and then, honestly, after that, so many crazy things happened that like that never seemed like a big deal to me anymore.
Hmm.
Like from
Wow.
the minute, that started a series of events that was so traumatic for me and my whole family, that just wouldn't stop happening. That the fact that, he had had sex with me and he shouldn't have, that was like almost inconsequential compared to what I was about to go through.
Hmm.
So I just like put it behind me and was like facing the DA and the police and the hospital and the press and people camping out front of my house. Like it got crazy, like you would expect things to now. But this was 1977, so we didn't expect any of this to happen.
Yeah.
My mom called the police because she thought that's what she should do. We didn't then assume that it was going to be like worldwide coverage, and we're going to have the phone ringing off the hook and cars parked out front of our house, and right, like we didn't anticipate that. um, Although you can imagine what it was like, because now that's the way the world is
Oh
for a lot of
yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but we were
Well,
surprised.
how did you, because I know you were sharing before you hadn't shared with your mom, what made you decide this time you wanted to share? Because you were saying earlier that, you'd had sex before, so the act itself wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is the first time this is happening. I don't even know what this is.
Right.
What kind of made you decide to share with your mom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, the attitude towards sex was so entirely different. I'm not sure that anybody who wasn't alive in the 70s could comprehend it right now. It's like sex was just a thing people did for fun. It was not harmful. I did not feel ashamed. I did not feel injured or damaged or devalued. Sex was just a thing people did whenever they wanted to, with whoever they wanted to, and nobody cared about it. It was your own business.
Hmm.
Sex was just sexual freedom or whatever we call that. But I didn't tell my mom. I told a guy that my boyfriend, who wasn't my boyfriend anymore, but he was still a friend. I told him because he I guess I called him. So and he was kind of my best friend. So what happened was I'm on the phone telling this to my friend, and my sister overheard, and my sister told my mom. So I would have never told her. So
Hmm.
so it was overheard, um, and then and then everything just got really crazy for us for our life. She decided she thought she should call the police, which I didn't understand for a long time, but since then I've come to understand why, because that was a lesson in respecting yourself and not letting people abuse you. Although I didn't get that for a really long time, I figured it out, as we talked about it over the years. um, so yeah, so here's this brief encounter, that was, in an inappropriate, really not nice thing for him to do to me. Took advantage of me, took advantage of my mom. Lots of guys were doing that. Is Hollywood. Teenage girls were considered, differently than they are now. But my mom was not going to stand for that, so she called the police. And boy, after that, it it was non-stop extreme pressure for everybody, like starting that day,
What type
probably
of
for almost a
pressure?
year.
What type of pressure was
Well,
it?
hospital, yeah. I mean, there's the first night, the police who didn't believe me, the hospital, you could tell they didn't believe me. Um, and then the next that yes, and then the police station. And then the next morning, first thing, to the district attorney's office in Santa Monica, but like in the back door through a parking lot entrance, because already it was that kind of thing. So like by the next morning, they were sneaking us in. Also, those guys did not believe me. They asked me questions like, "Are you having sex with your stepfather?" Like, so nobody believed me. Was
Hmm.
the it it I it made me angry because it was like, you're forcing me to tell you this thing that happened that I would have preferred not to tell you. And then on top of that, like, now you have the nerve to not believe me. Like, I didn't care if they believed me. I was angry because they're making me tell them something and then not believing me.
Hmm.
you know
Okay.
so it was, that was a really, I was a very angry young woman for a while. And that was kind of jarring to be treated that way, which is
Hmm.
the good side of how things are now.
Yeah.
You're not just abused immediately when you call the authorities. But it didn't take too long before evidence appeared, and then all of a sudden, a few days later, he's arrested, and they've found the pictures and stuff like that. So then suddenly, at least all the authority people, the court people, uh, believed I was telling the truth.
Yeah.
So that was a relief, because it was like, I told you I was telling the truth. Why would I make this up?
Right.
But the press did not treat us that way. But at least in the court system, we were getting taken seriously, that this had really happened and he had broken the law, and then he's arrested, and then it just was like explosion. It just snowballed, and just it changed everybody in my family forever, having this intense publicity like that.
Yeah.
So I feel for people when I see them going through it today, and it seems so silly that we didn't expect it. But like I said, this was before the O.J. Simpson case. Like, there was no example, no roadmap for how this was going to play out for my
Yeah.
family.
Well, when you were talking about being a really angry teenager,
Yeah.
is it was I know in part you were mentioning, no one's believing you and you're telling this story and having to tell it, in part because your mom's saying, we need to correct this.
Mhm.
Um, were you also like angry at your mom that you even had to do this in the first place or
Yeah, like I was mad at her for calling the police. I was mad at the police and everybody else I had to talk to, because they were all adults and I didn't want to talk about it. So I like hated them all because they just made me
yeah.
talk about it. I had to get, like, my dad had to hire an attorney for me because that's the situation I was in. Like, it was, there was nobody to protect me. I was just the victim. I had like no rights. You're
Yeah.
like no rights as the victim. You're like evidence. And they're like, we think she's crazy. We want to send her to a psychiatrist. And my dad's like, you need an attorney. So got me an attorney. But I even hated my attorney, who I love now, and he's a wonderful guy. But I was, so yeah, I was just really mad at everybody and the entire world. And I stayed mad probably for a good long year until he left the country. And then there was like a little bit of relief. But, you know, I stayed in my room. I didn't feel comfortable really going out and doing things. You know, there was
Mm.
like photographers, they came to my school and came and found me after class. They were there at my ninth grade graduation. So it put me in a really scary, you know, position.
Yeah.
And I think I was more angry than afraid, but yeah, that's like not a normal thing. And we didn't
Yeah.
really, like, I didn't tell my friends. This wasn't the kind of thing people talked about. You know, it wasn't like now. There was just one news show at the end of the day, and your
Yeah.
parents weren't going to talk to you about a sexual assault if you're 13 or 14. It's not something that you would discuss. So a lot of people knew, a lot of people didn't. No one ever said anything really about it because it would be inappropriate to say something like that. You didn't talk about things. So even the people at school might, you know, they might know, they might talk amongst themselves, but nobody approached me because it was like that would be rude. And
Hmm.
I guess just another thing different about the 70s is the way people behaved. Um, so yeah, so it was a super, super big deal. It was really crazy and it was really hard. And it took, you know, I mean, the next year was 10th grade and I went to a different school and stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of, after like a year, life moved on in its own way. You know, he
Yeah.
had left the country. I went to a different school. That took a lot of the pressure off. People didn't really, uh, you know, it wasn't a hot topic anymore. So I got to eventually move on from it. But I think the trauma that my family went through, and my mom was getting blamed and called all these terrible names, and we're both getting blamed and called all these terrible things.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think, I mean, I don't feel like any of us came out of that the same. It was like, we were different people after going through that. So it was a, you know, it was a big deal.
Well, it sounds like were you even angry at Roman Polanski, or for were you know were you just really mad at the aftermath of it
I was
more?
mad at the aftermath because the aftermath was so intense and it was much longer and much more thorough than 15 minutes of sex that I didn't want, but I knew I was going to be fine. You know, it was just,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, that was not a fun experience, but I think I could have, like most women do, you learn to live with bad things that happen to you. But the aftermath was so intense. And then, I mean, I think a little bit of me always felt like I don't really think he meant to hurt me. So that might be some, you know, a lot of people will judge that in a in unflattering ways to me. But I didn't really feel like he was trying to hurt me. I felt like he's just doing something wrong because he was selfish and he
Right.
wasn't,
Yeah.
you know. But then he got arrested, and then it was like, oh well, he's in it now. I knew he was sorry. I could see he was paying a price. I didn't feel like I had to waste any energy or emotion on him
Yeah.
because I mean, here I am, and he's sitting in jail. So it's like, well, I didn't feel the need to have any animosity towards him because I felt like he
Hmm.
was having consequences, I think. Um, and, you know, I don't know. I mean, why waste my energy thinking about it, right?
Well, I was
Not
gonna
only did I
say,
have bigger problems, like, you know, what he did was wrong and, you know, shitty, and I'm not going to waste my life think, you know, why dwell on caring about him? That's, I should be worried about myself and my own family.
I was gonna ask, you're saying that, well, it's, and also press, everything, it's known that the case did result in ramifications, which led to him leaving the
Hmm.
country. And he
Hmm.
still is, in exile, you would say, in
Right.
parentheses, right, where he's not back in the United States. And um, for you, him leaving, has that made you upset? Or for you, it was like, you know what? It's the better for me that he's gone. Like there wasn't really
Right.
because some people would be really mad. It's like he got away, he didn't get to, you know, get to jail like I wanted him
Hmm.
to. But for you, that doesn't
Well,
seem to be a consuming bother for
he
you.
he did go to jail. So the part of the story most people don't understand is that first he was arrested, and then as we struggled to have a plea deal, some arrangement with a really terrible narcissistic publicity seeking judge who was like known for that, and all the judge wanted was me on the stand. He had reserved a courtroom next to his courtroom for foreign press in anticipation of this going to trial. And my entire family was focused on this is not going to trial. We're going to settle this because when they did send me to one psychologist or psychiatrist, the their the the diagnosis was, well, she's fine now, but if you put her through a trial and put her on the stand and all this craziness, packed halls, you can't get in the exit entrances, my attorney would go to court in disguise. Like, if you put me in that, then I'm not going to be fine. So here suddenly we have a bigger enemy. We have this judge who doesn't care about me, doesn't care what Roman did to me. He just wants a trial and he wants me on the stand to shine the spotlight on himself. So now Roman's either even farther out of anybody any of us are angry with. It's like he at this point he's he'll plead guilty and we're going to make an arrangement. So oddly, the judge became the enemy of both of us.
Hmm.
And Roman came back to United States, surrendered himself, did a 42-day diagnostic study in Chino prison. And then when he got out from that, the judge was like, I wanted that to be 90 days. But the judge couldn't control that because you go for the study and they let you out when they're done. So then the judge is like, well, I'm going to put you back in jail for an indeterminate sentence, but come back here after 90 days or in a few weeks, and then I'll give you time served, which is crazy. But that's
Hmm.
the actual truth of what happened. The judge made arrangement after arrangement, broke his word, was talking to reporters in his chambers in front of the attorneys about what they thought he should do to make himself look good
Hmm.
in this case.
Okay.
So Roman came back to United States. He went to jail for 42 days. The judge decided that wasn't enough and wanted to, an indeterminate sentence. Well, what if the judge drops dead the next day? Then you're in jail for like up to 50 years. So it was, now you can see my relief when Roman left the country, because what's hanging over my head is a trial. And what's
Yeah.
hanging over Roman's head is go back to jail. The judge he's a liar, he's corrupt. And he's saying, this time you can trust me. I'm just going to put you in jail for like indeterminate, but come back in a couple of weeks and I'll let you out. So clearly that's not appropriate or legal. So everybody freaked out. Everybody freaked out. Even even the district attorney was like, well, you trusted him before. What, like implying you really think he's going to keep his word this time.
Hmm.
Roman went to Paris. My parents put me on a flight to Pennsylvania, said, good luck finding her. She's not coming. You can't subpoena her. And he was gone. And then it was just a matter of like, wait for the other shoe to drop for all the years it took for it to drop. So people don't understand that I'm not angry at him, but people also don't understand that not only that he didn't just flee the country, before that, he returned to the country and went to jail voluntarily for 42 days. And I never asked anybody to put him in jail for a day. My parents are like, admit you did it, say you're sorry, get probation. And the agreement was like probation, probation, and probation, but the judge
Hmm.
just couldn't stand it because he thought it made him look bad. And the judge also didn't care. The judge would rather have a trial. So we had this really horrible set of circumstances with the justice system, and like a judge and some other people in the DA's office,
Yeah.
not people that were directly involved, that ended up in Roman and I being on the same side from there on after, trying to get this case resolved. Like,
Hmm.
basically by saying he was supposed to get time served for his 42 days, give him time served. But he fled. That makes people upset in the justice system. They don't want to let him off after he left, even though it seemed like it was the only smart choice for him. They don't care about me. They're like, well, we can literally, the last time I was in court for this, the judge's answer was, we can't do what's best for the victim. So I'm nothing to them. I have no standing and no rights, and what's in my best interest or the best interest of my family or how I feel about it means zero to the court. So that's who you are if you're a victim. So oddly, we've been left on the same side of this thing that should have been resolved a long time ago. And it's, like here we all are, 45 years later, he still can't return. I still I've had some really unpleasant incidences with, like when he was arrested in Switzerland, I was out of town, paparazzi are in my yard, my sons are freaking out. We got people just like on our property with cameras looking for me. So I've had some really like can't go have my fabulous movie career like he can't. But we've all, my mom quit acting, went into real estate because she didn't want to be like the mother, the worst mother ever, stage mom of
Yeah.
the girl who's the mother whose daughter this happened to. So it was like life altering consequences for all of us in the end. So it's people don't know that part of the story. People just think like he did a bad thing and he never paid the price. And it's just really complicated, strange, long, drawn out thing. And you don't think you're going to be on the wrong side of the justice system. But man, when it happens, you are powerless and it's really scary. And it's not just me that happened to. That happens to people all the time.
Yeah.
And you're just, that's it. You have no control over your life. This judge did things he shouldn't have done. And, unfortunately, in all the time that's come since then, nobody, those people look out for each other. Like
Yeah.
the district attorneys and the judges, they, even though he's dead, even though this is years ago, no one will do the right thing. No one wants to not protect what they consider their own. And no one will do the right thing, which is give Roman time served, like he was promised for his 42 days in jail, unless there's something in it for them. It's like, what'll make them look bad, so they won't do it. So it's a very unfortunate thing to have the justice system like turn on you that way. So maybe with me explaining it a little bit just there makes it more understanding that like I don't have any hard feelings towards Roman anymore. I mean, we've talked, we've met, he's been married 30 years, he has a family, I have a family. All we've done is try and resolve this. Um, and I don't, there wasn't many hard feelings to begin with, considering what other people were deciding to put me through.
Yeah.
Um, but certainly after all these years, there's not any. And I think that's shocking to people, but if people understood what really happens when the justice system is turned on its head and is like coming, instead of protecting you, is coming after you. I mean, it's and I just don't think people believe that kind of stuff really happens. So I'm here to say, yeah, it really happens. And there's nothing you can do about it. If you have a bad judge, good luck.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, it's interesting that you've given so many interviews and even written a book about your experience because you think you wouldn't want to
Mhm.
talk to anyone um, because of the harmful experiences you had. And then writing a book as well, bringing attention to something.
Right.
Why did you feel like you wanted to do that?
Well, I hid from it for a long time, and hiding was always very scary because people would come around and I'd be like hiding and I'd be afraid. Um, then when he was arrested, uh, they arrested him in Switzerland because the district attorney, here we go with more people in the Los Angeles justice system, well, he was running for attorney general. So he thought it would be good publicity for him to arrest Roman. And, technically he's supposed to give me notice that he's going to do that and stuff. But of course he didn't because they consider me an enemy as well as the victim. I'm also their enemy because I'm not here to help them give him more consequences. So for his own publicity, he had him arrested, and that was a surprise. I was out of town. It was all over the news. My face was on CNN in the lobby. There was people in my yard filming my adult sons. There
Yeah.
was people at my tiny little airport when I got home, people waiting at the airport. So so after that, I decided, maybe I should. I mean, I think even before that, I had done some interviews because it just hiding is scary. Once you come forward, it's all that fear of being discovered goes away. So I'm like, I'm going to write the book. I'm going to tell this story as I remember it. And then if anybody wants to know the truth, it's going to be right there for people to see. That has not stopped people from still continuing to have this whole other story that's stuff that never happened or believe things they've heard that isn't the truth. So writing the book didn't really clear everything up, but it is there if anybody cares to see it. And then I found that like it just facing it, and I had already had to talk about it so much just after it happened. And so now over time, I'm not uncomfortable at all talking about it. And it's like really it's much better being available and telling, answering questions that people have. So much better than like hiding and being afraid people are going to find you. So in the end, I think writing the book was a really good idea. I think it's a good book. People have told me like it has helped them kind of sort through some personal things in their own life. So that's nice if it was meaningful to people.
Yeah.
And I don't have that fear anymore. I don't have, it's like, I don't have that fear of somebody's going to find this out. It's like, well, everybody knows this. So if you
Hmm.
have something to ask me, or if you have something to say about me, like I'm right here and believe me, I will talk to you or I will have an opinion about it. So it was kind of empowering. So I feel pretty good about it. And I had to like, you know, negotiate with Roman a little bit because one thing you haven't mentioned is I sued him. So that was something I never thought I'd do, but like there was articles somebody took my picture. This is when I'm still in California. Someone like took a picture of me, made up a pretend article, and printed it in one of those European tabloids. So then I was upset and I was like, can't we sue that tabloid? And my attorney rightly said, like, well, no, because that's no way to not get attention. But you know who's responsible for this? Roman is, and all this stuff that's messed your life up because of what he did to begin with. So he kind of talked me into it. And so I did have a civil suit and we did settle it and came to an agreement, like money agreement. And that was very helpful for me to get out from under this fear and having people just like walk up my driveway and knock on my door and stuff. I
Yeah.
gave me a little financial security to like help me out because I had not, I was just a young mother with little kids and stuff, and it was scary.
Yeah.
So then, when I wanted to write the book, I'm like, I'm going to write this book. And he's like, well, I'm going to do my memoir. And we're like, well, let's everybody just do whatever they want to do because we tell the same story. We know what happened. There's not a misunderstanding between us. He apologized for what he did. Everybody's clear on between his family and my family. We know what happened. It was not a great thing. And a lot of really bad repercussions that last to this day have come out of it. Um, so we've come to, we're all at a good place with each other, and I'm at a good place of not being afraid of it. So in the end, I think, I feel pretty good about all of it. And
Well,
there,
I was
and
good.
it's nice to know. I wouldn't want to have hard feeling. I mean, the judge is dead, so there are some hard feelings, but like, you shouldn't go through life with anger and regret and bad feelings, right? I don't want to carry that around with me. So I feel good to be in a good place about all of it.
Do you like when you say feeling good and not being angry at the judge, like can you actually say you forgive the judge or it's more of you just try not to think about it?
You know, I don't. I wish I did. I wish I could say like he was just a mean old sexist man who just wasn't a great person and he did things he shouldn't have. I guess because I still suffer because of what he did and there was never any consequences to him. Like, to be 100% honest, on the inside, like, I do not forgive him. And it still upsets me that no one else today who has the power to rectify it will do it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to get involved in this because everybody just looks bad. There is no benefit to resolving this for me. So I'm not going to lie, there's still some resentment there. But you can only control what you can control. And I've
Yeah.
controlled my own narrative, and I've controlled my relationship, like my family's relationship with this like trauma, and my relationship with I mean, honestly, it's like after 40 years of fighting the same battle together, there is a real like friendship there, like, because we've been fighting the same system, you know again, both of us fighting against the same thing. Well, there comes some friendship with that and some common interest. So I'm happy. I'm happy that I feel like it's all resolved. I'm happy. I feel like, we couldn't have done anything more to work with what we've got, and everyone has to live with the way things are and the things that have happened. But I feel like I don't feel like there's anything else I need. I've done everything I can,
Yeah.
and I'm
Well,
comfortable knowing I've done that.
Samantha, I do want to ask just one last question because I want to be respectful of your
Sure.
time. Um, how do you see life differently now after what happened when you were a young child, well, a young teen, experiencing, all this stress and pressure of the world watching you for a time, and then when it was no longer interesting, no longer watching you, and then when it was interesting again, watching you again. Um, but at the same time,
It, it's
like how
it's
do you see life differently now than then?
I feel like I just have I certainly have a different relationship with fame. Like, I don't want that for myself. Like, when I was younger, fame seemed like a great idea. Now, please, like, I would never want fame. That is just way too much
Yeah.
pressure and interest in your life. But I think I guess I'm a little more skeptical. I don't believe things that I hear. I always know that there's two sides to the story. And as obviously Me Too brought a lot of this stuff to the surface. So I'm watching other people. So I have, I mean, I guess what I have opinions about is the machine, right? What do you call it? News entertainment, where I like, there's just this use and abuse of people who have been victimized by the media. So I have some pretty strong opinions about the way they just use people up for their own benefit and then discard them, and they never really cared about them. It's like they'll want you on their show, they'll want you to like show us some more pain, and then they're just on to the next person. And what they're really doing is
Mm.
using people. It's not about empowering women. It's not about like tell your truth and other people will benefit. No, it's about they want ratings, they want you on their show, they're using you, they don't care about you, and it's akin to just abuse.
Mm.
So I have a lot of strong opinions about the way I see things play out in the media and the way they treat people. And I see it from a really different perspective. I see it as, in because I know what it's like. People telling you like, this will be good for you. You will help other people. Wouldn't it be great if you told your story? But
Yeah.
it's really like, I want you, I need you, give me what I want, because this is my job to get you on this show. So most of it is ill-intended, and it's not, they will tell you they care about you. They will tell you you should come tell your truth, but they don't care, and they're not your friend, and they're there to do business, and your pain is their business, and it's a pretty ugly little part of the world. So, but it's also not something most people live with, so that doesn't really come, that's not like a day-to-day thing, right? That's like,
Yeah.
that's not a day-to-day thing. So it's I have some pretty strong opinions about things like that. But as far as on a day-to-day thing, it was really rough, but we got through it, and bad things happen to people, and you have to deal with the life that you have. I mean, so many people have been through far worse things than me. Like, I think about like Elizabeth Smart, or Amanda Knox, like women who have gone through just
Yeah.
grueling, horrible events in their lives, and it's like, in comparison, nothing that bad happened to me. So I feel like, as far as having bad things happen, I think that, that what happened to me is something that I mean, certainly what happened to me with Roman is something that not an uncommon experience for women, and you can learn to like put that behind you, and accept it into part of your life that something unpleasant happened to you. But the rest of the crazy publicity stuff and the crazy stuff in court, that's that lives inside me. I'm not sure, it doesn't have much of a chance to affect me on the day to day, but when something happens that does like touch that nerve, it's that nerve is still there.
Yeah. Well, Samantha, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me and to kind of,
Sure.
express your thoughts on this and your perspective. And I really appreciate it, especially,
Yeah.
since you've had
Well,
so many
well,
bad
thanks.
experiences.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's always it's nice to be able to just tell the truth, and for what it's worth, and maybe there's some lessons in it for other people, maybe not, but I'm happy to talk about it, and just kind of see it. Maybe there's a positive to it every chance I get. Like, if something positive can come out of it for anybody else, then why not do it? So it was really nice talking to you a little bit. I hope this turns out well. You have to send me the link so I can see it.